So I was thinking as I made this morning, how many of you have written a line of code before? Okay, quite a few. How many have written like 100 lines of code? Yeah, all right. So I am terrible at coding. I can hack, I can look at something and fuck with the parameters, but I'm not really very good at it. And so I ran around, I tried lots of different languages, and I did Hello World, and looking back at me is a void. And then you go on Stack Exchange, and you ask a simple question, and some man tells you to read the fucking manual. And so, as I started playing with New Art City, before I was even helping run it, the question, or I don't know, the world that I envisioned didn't say hello world to a void. You arrive in a world, and it tells you, welcome home. So I also don't like PowerPoint, and so I decided just to organize the information spatially with New Art City, so you can kind of see, oh yeah, totally. You can see the top-down things that I would like to talk about. So let's zoom in on the top left corner. So New Art City is an artist-run virtual space. It's founded by a friend of mine, Don XYZ, and he's an internet artist, and his medium is often websites. He works a lot with code. We were founded in March of 2020, and since then we've had about 160 public exhibitions featuring over 4,000 artists. In our database is something around 75,000 artworks, and we've raised $0 of venture capital. And so, why is that important? It's a toolkit. It's not a platform. And so, I mean, I think we're kind of, if we're here, we kind of understand that the platform defines the Web 2 era, that after when Google and Facebook arrive, Tim O'Reilly is the individual who coins the term in order to market his consulting services to corporations that are downstream from this new innovation wave. And what he said is, you must become a content aggregator. And this is what gives you the platformization, or what I call the gentrification of the internet. And so we choose to say toolkit because what we're building here is infrastructure. And infrastructure is equal parts technology and culture. So yes, we have this drag and drop editor that we're currently in right now that makes it quite easy to make a 3D multiplayer space without code. But as important as this is the community that exists around it. And so what we mean by this is when you arrive, there is somebody there to greet you, and there's somebody there to understand, like, what are your needs and how can we support you? And through this, we've gathered a great deal of knowledge on how do you think about curating art in a virtual space? How do you do the basics of Blender to make yourself a wall? And how can you learn enough to be dangerous? And so we create these tools, but we gather these resources. And the important thing is the hardest thing to do when you're making a show on New Art City really should happen on the other side of the tool. It should be making the art itself, because our tool is incredibly simple. I mean, I'm thinking of what you were talking about with Bitsy, that it's really quite simple and there's not a lot going on. And so when you learn how to do Blender for New Art City, or something like build assets or curate digital art there, it's not locked into a vocabulary of this tool. You can go do something more complex like Mozilla Hubs or Unity, and those skills will transfer. So let's zoom out again. Why do we not want to be a platform, aside from the obvious, like, it's ugly, it's dumb, we don't like them? Why don't we like them? Entrusting our creative labor to corporate platforms puts our art at risk because platforms are precarious. the content made by artists is advertising for the platforms that host it. And they can choose at any time to delete it for whatever reason, and you have no recourse. I'm sure many of us have experienced this. And our labor is not compensated. And so we really want to try to reverse this, because if you think of New Art City like a platform, then the fact that we've shown 4,000 artists is not particularly impressive. Those are really small numbers for existing for 2 years. But the reason why that's impressive is because we're running it like an art gallery. So until quite recently, we've spoken to every single person who comes in the door. And so the reason why we do this is because institutions with privilege reached out to us a lot, especially during the height of the pandemic, and we really wanted there to be an exchange of privilege when they entered. And so that means financial or in-kind contributions of many types. And then we, on the other side, wanted to make this an open door for people who are disadvantaged by structural injustice. And so these are the people who are ignored by institutions. We want to give them as warm and welcoming an experience as possible. And so let's move in and talk a bit more about what we mean by accessibility, which is kind of the core thing that we think is really important. So accessibility equals access plus inclusion. This means you can't simply open the door. You must welcome people through the door. And so it's intersectional because not only is geography, it's education, geography, technology, like technological skills and the power of your machine, your bandwidth, and physical disability all intersect to determine who gets to make these experiences and who gets to view them. And so we try to solve for as many of those things as possible. This means we don't develop for the headset, and we use JavaScript, which is highly preservable, and we make it so you can make a 3D virtual gallery that runs on any computer and on a mobile phone, where like most people in the world statistically get the internet from. And so we also, let's see, we also have a screen reader accessible catalog view, which allows people to input alt text for any object they've uploaded, and then that makes it viewable to somebody who's using a screen reader. And so alt text is an important tool for web accessibility, yes, but this is a really great example of how infrastructure has to be technology plus culture, because you can give somebody the metadata field, but you also have to give them the tools to think about web accessibility and understand why it's important. And so to this end, we've convened an accessibility panel of artists who are experienced in a lot of areas of disability arts. This is a body to whom we're accountable as we're working towards our accessibility goals, and they can also guide us in terms of what goals to set and how to approach them. And they can also, this is sort of a type of governance, right, that they can also help redistribute our curation budget to disabled artists, because visibility is extremely important. You can have alt text on an exhibition, but unless you're top down having an artist make it, then you're not gonna reach the audiences that you wanna reach, and you're just doing your little performative allyship, right? So this is maybe leads well into curation as mutual aid. And so I feel like in the previous century, curation really refers to the selection of things that get past the gate and get to reach the presentation layer, or get to reach the public. Obviously, the computer makes that a lot less relevant. And so what is the role of a curator now? I think it's a few things, but in this case, I think it has a lot more to do with allocating resources and connecting people who can use resources with the resources that they need. And so 20% of New Art City's revenue that we get from these institutions is rededicated to programs like our residency and commissions and other types of in-kind technical support. And so the way that we practice our residency is we bring in an artist and they get 4 tutorial sessions with us where we're just chatting, we're talking through their concept, and and over that time, we want them to build enough skills that they can run off and do what they need to do. But it doesn't end there. each of our residents join a special Discord channel on our Discord server, and they get to stay in touch with one another. And this has actually led to exhibition opportunities for multiple residents, where an artist in Brazil was showing in Taiwan the next year. And this is sort of another step towards community governance, where we want these residents to stay around and to share with the other residents and also decide who is nominated next. Whew, thirsty. I don't talk this much usually. So why don't we switch to looking at some spaces that are more fun than this little PowerPoint. So we mentioned it's multiplayer, but we don't go super hard on the avatars. And you can see right here, this is what you look like. There's nobody else in the space right now, so you can't see what I look like. But you're represented as this little green diamond. And you can change the color, and you can see that other people are moving around. But that's about as far as it goes. And the reason why we do this is the more polygons you have dedicated to avatars, the less polygons you have for art. Moreover, I think it's interesting that having a complex avatar is a way to be cool. And I don't know that it advantages a certain type of identity performance that allows some people to be cooler than others. I really enjoy that, I don't know, going to an art opening can often be really alienating, right? Because everybody's looking at you and you don't know how you're being perceived or you're being ignored. This is a great equalizer. Everyone is here together and we look the same. So I'd like to go for a walk. So I curated a collection of worlds, which is installed in Église Sainte-Anne, of a few worlds that I think are representative of an emergent theme that we've started to observe after a few years of doing this. Because our curation prioritizes people who are typically underrepresented, and because we really just focus on showing the art. If you have NFTs, you can link them. It's quite easy. It's just a hyperlink. But what happens here is the thing that is tokenized, not the token, right? And so I think it allows a lot of people to make work that is not manifestly commercial. And so one thing that I think we see a lot of is archives and shrines, and often sort of the merging of the two. And one of the first artists who's really emblematic of this is one of my favorite artists in the world and a good friend, Danielle Brathwaite-Shirley. And so when she made this in March of 2020, she had several interactive pieces up online, which are basically choose your own adventure games. And she wanted to make them this way to sort of get around the performative allyship of simply witnessing rather than being an active participant. And this world is an archive of many of those pieces. So this is Resurrection Lands. I won't go off and play the games. But I found this so compelling because it's a way to show both the ephemera that came from inside of the games and the games themselves, to explode the assets into an exhibition that is a natural format for exhibiting them without the bounds of time and space. I love this tunnel. So let's move to SEMA World is another good example kind of this technique of taking a moving image work or a collection of moving image works and taking the assets that went into those artifacts and spreading them around into something that is more expansive than simply a movie on a Vimeo page. So this piece is called The Release, and this is a really great example of an artist who's really engaging in the critical poetics of NFTs before even tokenizing anything. The basic premise is if your consciousness was uploaded to the cloud, what from your body, what from your human life would you bring with you? And she framed these as prayers. And so she got participation from the audience, and she got, I think, 15 submissions of what people would like to bring with them. And she chose to be the steward of these prayers, and she's minted them as NFTs, and now it is her responsibility to make sure that they don't perish. And this concept of stewardship is really exciting to me, and I think it expresses a lot of what we want to be doing on New Art City as well. Wow, it looks really cool on the big screen. Now we're getting to it. Most of these were commissioned by New Art City, and this is our first artist in residence, Hisu Kwan. And she has an autobiographical feminist religion called Le Musum, where she creates a generational history.
Hi. You just entered Le Musum Digital Shrine. Yay! Today is September 21st, 2021. Which is Chuseok, one of the biggest holidays in Korea. So, this room is my home studio in Noi Valley. You can see my work desk and some important objects in my life. And also my amazing partner, Andrew, sitting next to me.
And so she uses the avatars and these constructed avatars of her ancestors to both tell a story of the past, but also reclaim a story of the future. And I really appreciate how many artists are using New Art City to do magic and to do ritual. And so she did a potluck ritual for Chuseok, as she mentioned, and this space is a shrine to her female ancestors. And so she 3D scanned all of the people who were at the event. I'm looking for my co-founder, Don. He's in here somewhere. Oh, there's Don. Hi, Don. And so this is sort of taking from a tradition of leaving food offerings for ancestors and bringing it into the virtual. It's hard to see this tiny screen. Okay, we have one more that we can look at. Oh, I think we want to go to the next one. So this was our second artist in residence, Henrique Fagundes, who's a Brazilian artist who was also working around sort of notions both of generational history and a speculative future for future generations. And so he imagines a future where poor Brazilian people sell the rights to their digital body as NFTs, which he calls non-fungible person. And the piece is called All Watched Over by Machines of Loving Grace, which is of course a reference to the famous optimistic Richard Brautigan poem of the same name. Sound. Okay, so I've shown you some worlds, and I've shown you some things that I think about. There's preservation, there's education. I don't know, how are we doing on time, Fabienne?
We should try to conclude. It's
Okay.
never easy, but
That's fine.
regarding time,
I
we
feel like
have-
I've managed to say, yeah, most of what I think is important. And of course, feel free to come talk to me if you have any questions or if you want to show on New Art City. We'd love to have you.
Thank you so much, Sammie. It's obviously amazingly impressive as a platform. Again, I just want to reiterate that Sammie is very generously sharing this platform with us in Sainte-Anne exhibition, but also she has created a specific commission for the festival that is called Well, that she performed yesterday during the opening, and that is also on view in the Église Sainte-Anne. So both her artworks and the platform that she participated in building are both viewable there. So thanks again, Sammie, for your generosity. Thank you.